First Republic Bank has become the latest bank to be hit by the current banking crisis after being forced to seek a £188 billion $229 billion bailout from the Fed and other US banks. As a result, the share price fell sharply and share trading was suspended 17 times in one day. Investors' and customers' concerns were raised by the bank announcing that it only has $34 billion in cash after the bailout. This banking crisis comes after the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and Silvergate Bank. Banking stocks globally have been falling since Silicon Valley Bank collapsed last week due to bond-related losses that piled up when interest rates surged last year. The International Criminal Court, ICC, has issued an arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin, accusing him of responsibility for the war crime of illegal deportation of children from Ukraine. In its first warrant involving Ukraine, the ICC on Friday called for Putin's arrest on suspicion of unlawful deportation of children and unlawful transfer of people from the territory of Ukraine to the Russian Federation. Russia, which is not a party to the court, said the move was meaningless. Moscow has repeatedly denied accusations that its forces have committed atrocities since it launched a full-scale invasion of its neighbor in February last year. The ICC has 123 member countries and its budget for 2023 is €170 million, £150 million. The UK-Rwanda plan was agreed in April 2022 and was supposed to send people seeking asylum in the UK to be settled in Africa, but no one has made the journey yet after the first flight was stopped following an appeal to the European Court of Human Rights. Throughout 2022, 45,728 people crossed to the UK via the Channel, up 60% on the previous year. Home Secretary Suella Braverman's visit comes as the government looks to ban people who arrive in the UK via non-standard routes from claiming asylum. The UK has already paid £120 million to Rwanda as part of the deal, with the costs of processing and integrating people set to be provided once they depart. A near-conclusive 90% verdict of whether Polish woman Julia Wendell is Madeleine McCann has been reached after a Swiss company used facial recognition software. Julia Wendell claims she is the missing British toddler who vanished from Portugal in 2007. Julia is also waiting for results from 3 DNA samples and a genetic test after she made headlines for her claims. Ava X, a facial recognition firm in Switzerland, says their face-matching software found that Julia is extremely unlikely to be Madeleine. This is despite Julia having the same rare eye condition as missing Madeleine, a coloboma in her right eye. Dr. Fia Johansson, a private investigator working on the case, said that she is still convinced that Julia was trafficked into Poland as a child. Ukraine has announced that a deal allowing Ukrainian grain exports to pass through the Black Sea has been extended for 120 days. But Russia said that it would only allow exports to continue if its own exports of food and fertilizer are freed up. The announcement comes after a week of wrangling after Russia said Monday that it had agreed to extend the Black Sea Grain Initiative but only for 60 days. The grain deal was initially brokered by the UN and Turkey last July after Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 fueled the global food crisis. Ukraine and Russia produce a large percentage of the world's grain and fertilizer, together supplying some 28% of globally traded wheat and 75% of sunflower oil during peacetime. Former U.S. President Donald Trump says he expects to be arrested on Tuesday in a case that involves him allegedly paying hush money to a porn star before the 2016 presidential election. In a post on his Truth Social platform on Saturday, Trump called on his supporters to protest ahead of his alleged arrest. Trump wrote,
"The Republican candidate and former President of the United States of America will be arrested on Tuesday of next week. Protest Take Our Nation Back."
The district attorney's office has declined to comment on the matter. The investigation centers on a $130,000 payment that Michael Cohen, Trump's former personal lawyer and fixer, made to porn star Stormy Daniels in the waning days of Trump's 2016 campaign. Ukrainian officials have expressed outrage over Putin's surprise visit to the Ukrainian city of Mariupol. Russian President and international fugitive Vladimir Putin visited the Russian-occupied port city on Sunday. Mariupol became a worldwide symbol of resistance after outgunned and outmanned Ukrainian forces held out in a steel mill for nearly 3 months before Moscow finally took control of it in May 2022. Much of the city was pounded to rubble by Russian shelling. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry said in a statement that Putin chose to visit at night to hide from Russian TV viewers. The once bustling port city, which had a population of 500,000, is now home to just 90,000 people, many of them too old or too ill to leave the decimated city. The investment banking company UBS has agreed to take over stricken Credit Suisse Bank for $3.25 billion, £2.67 billion. The Swiss government forced through the takeover at well below market value amid fears of a global banking crisis. After a weekend of frantic talks, the Swiss government and the banking regulator brokered a deal. Once it became clear a $54 billion loan to Credit Suisse from the Swiss central bank had failed to halt the slide in its share price. Private investors who supported Credit Suisse with $16 billion of credit were also expected to be wiped out by the deal. After last week's collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, whose UK arm had to be taken over by HSBC for the nominal sum of £1, the crisis engulfing Credit Suisse had fueled anxiety about contagion in the international banking system.